Hey everybody, welcome back. Let's do another clock pour on a record. So I've got my spinner set up. This white stuff is freezer paper because sometimes I just get tired of wiping all the paint off of the wooden pieces, so I just wrap freezer paper on it, and then you can just pull it right off. When the paint dries, you peel it off the freezer paper and you use it again. If it's a pretty design, you can use it as a paint skin, so it's just a great thing to have. So my design today is hopefully a spiderweb inspired design. So I've got lots of black. This is apple barrel black. Everything's mixed with Floetrol, American Floetrol. About 1 part paint to maybe 1.5 parts Floetrol. It's thicker than some things. It's like flip cup consistency. So there's my black. I've got a lot of that. And then I have white, which is apple barrel and Sargent mixed together. You see how thick that is? It's like, it flows more or less. It moves, but it's pretty thick. And then I've got antique gold. This may actually be a mix of brands, but I think it's primarily FolkArt antique gold. Okay, so got a sink strainer here. I've cut out the little spike from the middle to make it easier to pour into. Then my record, I've sanded it a bit just to add a little bit of extra gripping texture to the surface, and I've got tape on the back so that the paint doesn't all flow through the hole. Let's get started. I'm going to start by putting some flow paint here around the side, just to make sure that everything can travel pretty well. This is probably not strictly necessary because on a round canvas, it's easier for the paint to flow over the sides, especially when you spin it. But, okay, so there's that in the middle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add kind of a large layer of black, and then a small layer of white, followed by just a little bit of gold. I don't want there to be tons of gold. I want the gold to be more like the shimmer on a spider web that you see when it catches the light, and provide just a little bit more contrast. And then some more black, kind of a biggish layer of black, because we want it to look like these delicate white and gold lines. Amidst mostly black, so it looks kind of spooky spiderwebby. Okay, so then I'm just going to keep adding these same colors in the same order, layer after layer, so I'll speed it up so it's not so boring. Can I just say, as this is flowing out, I am totally in love with it. It is looking, I mean, it looks like a flower, but when it's the white and gold against the black, it really does look like a spider web, so I'm very excited. I'm starting to make my layers a little bit smaller because I think I'm getting close to what will end up being the middle. So I'm just going to try adding smaller amounts of everything. Less white, less gold, but also smaller amounts of black in the middle. Okay, I think that's going to be my center. I think I have enough paint on here that I don't need to add a bunch more, so I'm just going to let it sit for a minute. Actually, I'll give it a gentle spin while the strainer is on the top, and as the paint sort of slides to the side, that'll help pull the extra paint out of the strainer. Okay, that might have been a little bit too gentle. Let me spin it just a little harder. Oh, this is so cool. Okay, I do need to get this strainer pulled up from the middle. So I'm going to have a paper towel ready to grab it. Just going to lift it up really, really gently. Wow, that looks really cool in the middle. Very, very cool. Just going to trace a couple of lines in there to make it look a little bit more balanced. I'm really happy with how this looks. Okay, let me spin it again. Wow! That's amazing! Let me torch it. Okay, let me spin it again. That's fantastic. I think that definitely gets the spider web effect, though it also is very kind of flowery, if that's more what somebody wants for a clock. So yeah, super happy with this. Let me give you a close-up. All right, here it is. So we've just got some very fine, delicate layers. There's a lot of gold there. There's more gold than I was expecting. Maybe I should have layered the gold first and then the white on top, but still, plenty of white. And then the center looks a little bit messy. It's possible I'll touch it up slightly with a brush, but because this is a clock, the clock mechanism will be coming right out of the middle, and so it'll hide some of that. So I don't think it has to be too perfect. Anyway, I will show you the next step of this, which is finishing it with resin. I am out of my garage, and I'm going to be resining with this epoxy resin from Let's Resin. And I went ahead and taped along the underside of the edges, and I also put tape around the side to help the resin stay on and not all run off the side. Before we get going on the actual resining, I want to make a quick statement on resin safety. If your protective suit doesn't look more or less like this, you are not properly protected from resin vapors. I did this clock on the same day with another clock, so I already have my resin pre-mixed here, so I'll go ahead and pour that onto the clock. So I wasn't quite sure what to do as far as the numbers went, and I thought it would be really fun and kind of spooky to add these googly eyes as the numbers on the clock to kind of ham up that Halloween vibe. Alright, so I've poured some resin on, and then I'm just going to use this popsicle stick to spread it around. I want to bring it all the way up to each edge, making sure that it gets all the way around the googly eyes and all the way up to contacting the tape at every point. Then the next step is very important, which is torching out the air bubbles, because even when you mix resin with a resin mixer and there aren't tons of large visible air bubbles, there will still be tiny air bubbles that will come out when you torch it. You want to torch very thoroughly, not staying in any one place for too long, but making multiple passes around the whole surface to make sure that you get up every last air bubble that is in the resin. Now I'm checking around all of my little googly eye numbers, whether you're using googly eyes or raised numbers or something else in your resin. That's going to be an area that kind of attracts air bubbles, and you don't want to torch too hard there because you could damage your numbers or the eyeballs. So I'm using a toothpick to kind of pull the air bubbles away from that surface, and then it makes it easier to then torch those air bubbles out. Okay, so I've got a preliminary finish on this. I'm going to cover it now with a clean plastic bin and let it sit for an hour to sort of begin to set up, and then I'll come back and I'll pull off that tape from around the edge. So I'm carefully lifting that up off the top, and I'm just going to check the surface and see if there's any other bubbles or pieces of dust that I need to get. You really have to examine it very closely and carefully because it can be hard to see some dust from the surface. So I'm just using some tweezers to pick up a couple of things that have fallen in the surface. Alright, now it's time to remove the tape from the edge. So just carefully pull that off. The reason we wait an hour is so that the resin starts to set up a little bit so that it's not quite so runny. It's still runny enough that it'll go over the edge a little bit, but not so runny that it'll all run off your clock. So this helps if you're trying to get a really smooth surface across the whole area and you can have trouble with too much resin running off the edges. Taping the edge and then removing it after about an hour can help a lot. So now I'm just going to wipe the underside of the clock and get those drips off. Try to clean those up ahead of time so that I don't have hard resin lumps to get off at the end. Grabbing off just another little piece of dust that I'm finding. You gotta get those off while the resin is still wet enough to reform its nice smooth surface. Okay, this is looking good, so I'm going to cover it back up again and let it cure for several days. I will show you how it looks when it is all finished and it's got the clock hands on it. See you then! So here it is all finished. As you can see, these googly eyes are really interesting. They had quite a unique effect for where the numbers usually go. And then the clock hands, I ended up spray painting these because the ones that I had were either black or gold. But I think that the white really stands out well against the black and gold design. So yeah. Turned out very, very cool. Thanks so much for watching this clock making tutorial, and I hope that it inspired you to try something new. Let me know if you have ever made a wacky design like these eyeballs on here, or if you stick to more classic designs. I hope to see you back at my channel very soon for another video, and I will see you then. Bye!